So, what we're studying now is chapter 60. Only 2 chapters after this one.
Test next week.
Test is not this coming Wednesday, but the next Wednesday.
Yeah.
At least it's not
Woden Day.
the day of Woden.
The day of Woden.
It's not good.
What?
It's
This is a one-day one. This is a one-day chapter. And it talks about chemical cycling. This is a satellite picture of the Earth showing the amount of carbon in the ocean. And you can see it's high where there's red and it's low where there's blue. The amount of carbon just floating around in the ocean. Pretty cool that we can tell things like that just by looking at the water with satellites. Yes?
So, is the amount of carbon higher at the South Pole because there's so many walruses?
No.
That'd be funny.
There's an upwelling that happens when the ocean currents when they move down and they hit the continent of Antarctica, and they come up and they bring up a lot of nutrients with them. Also, the carbon is used in high amounts at the equator by organisms that grow there. And so they take in the carbon and do photosynthesis. It's a lot colder down here, so you don't have as much photosynthesis going on. And there's less light there. They aren't using the carbon up that way. So there's a multitude of reasons there. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about several different cycles. And the first cycle we're going to talk about is the water cycle. Water kind of replenishes itself and cycles through our environment. Can I borrow your water bottle? Think about this water here. How old is that water?
Very.
You want to have any idea how old that water is?
4 billion years old.
Or about 4.5 billion years old these molecules are.
Yeah.
That's old water. How is that? Well, our solar system was formed 4.5 billion years ago, and the water doesn't disappear or go away. It just cycles. Sometimes it's in the ocean. Sometimes it evaporates into the air. It can condensate and form clouds. It can rain back down, that's precipitation, and run along the land, forming rivers and springs, and it can end up in lakes, and it can sink down into the ground, forming our groundwater, and it can eventually return back to the ocean, and it just cycles about and cycles about and cycles about. We can pump it up out of the ground and put it in our water bottles and drink it. And it'll come out of our bodies too, through breathing and sweating and peeing. It'll eventually, all the water that goes in will come out. It just cycles around. The water in that water bottle might have at one time been in the stomach of a dinosaur.
Might have.
Might have.
So
It just cycles around. Yes, William.
What happens when they make new water? Like they take hydrogen and oxygen and fuse them together?
Well, that's true. You can make water out of hydrogen and oxygen together. So it's the oxygen atoms and the hydrogen atoms are still old, but they can be brought together through that process to make water.
Wait.
Yes.
So is water technically good for you?
Sure. It makes up about 60% of your cells. So if you don't have it, your cells will die.
You die.
Yeah.
You die.
That's
Bye-bye.
why you get thirsty.
You did.
You want to see Bill Nye
Oh, yes.
making clouds?
We have like a new book.
I love Bill Nye. I love Bill Nye the Science Guy. He makes me so
Bill
happy.
Nye making clouds.
We didn't do anything because the AP
I was going to say we were take
The science guy. I'm in this giant freezer. Now let's see what happens when I come outside where you are. See, the surface of my bubble helmet of science turns cloudy. That's because water vapor, which was floating around in the air, sticks to the cold surface in little liquid water droplets. Now, this process, this effect, this thing that happens is called condensation. It's the same thing that happens to people who wear glasses when they come in after being outside on a cold day. It's where clouds come from. Where'd you guys go? That's funny. Oh, very funny. Anyway, condensation is sort of the opposite of evaporation. Instead of liquid water gaining energy and becoming a vapor, water vapor loses energy, becomes a liquid. Little tiny droplets that stick to cold surfaces. That's a very important thing about condensation. Water vapor needs a place to stick in order for condensation to happen.
Look at the glass next time you drink your milk. Does it seem to sweat? Well, the glass isn't really sweating, of course, but it is wet. It's just the water vapor in the nearby air being condensed.
When clouds form, water vapor turns into tiny liquid water drops. But in order for that to happen, the water has to have some place to stick. It has to have something to stick to. So take a look at this. This is our big glass jug cloud apparatus of science. And we're going to make a cloud in here. First, we'll add a little water. This will be the water that will form our cloud. Just swirling it around a little. Now, using this pump, we'll pressurize the big glass jug. Then when I pull this rubber stopper off, the air in the jug will expand. And that's when a cloud should form. 3, 2, 1. See, nothing happened. That's because the water vapor didn't have anything to stick to. So what we're going to do is add some dust. Just a tiny amount of dust. And to make the dust, we'll use the smoke from these 2 matches. That's all the dust we need to form a cloud. Now watch. We'll pressurize it again. When I pull it off, the air in the jug expands. And when it expands, it cools off. The same thing happens to air masses when they get blown around by the wind and pushed up high into the sky. 3, 2, 1. See? It's a cloud. It's the water cycle. It's science.
Okay. Wasn't that cool? They made it cloud. So water just cycles around, and that introduces us to the idea that all matter cycles. It's not only water that cycles. The important biological cycle that you need to know about is the carbon cycle. You see, most of your molecules are made of carbon. We learned the 4 types of organic molecules at the beginning of the year. Do you remember them?
Yeah.
There were carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic acids, and proteins. And those 4 types of molecules all contain a lot of carbon. So where's the carbon that makes up all these molecules in your body? Where's it come from? Well, the main source of carbon is in the air. The air is carbon dioxide in it. There's CO2 in the air. All around here, there's carbon dioxide. Do you know what percentage of the air is carbon dioxide?
72.
72%? Anyone want to guess? 17%?
29.
What percentage of the air is carbon dioxide? How much of this stuff is CO2? 25?
97.
65?
75.
75? 99?
17.4.
Well, it's about 0.03%.
I was close.
It's way less than 1%, actually. It's 0.03%. It's hardly any. But that's enough to provide the carbon necessary for living things.
Is that like the...
Plants open their stomates and let that carbon dioxide in, and they fix the carbon dioxide, which means they grab it and hold on to it and make it into their molecules. We call that process photosynthesis. Plants taking in carbon dioxide and making themselves out of it.
Can't you die if there's too much carbon dioxide in air?
Yeah, you could. You can't have too high of it.
Carbon
You're right.
dioxide, like
And
meter
oxygen.
thingy in our house.
You're right. You probably have a carbon monoxide.
Monoxide, yeah.
Yeah.
Bad.
Carbon monoxide is a dangerous poison even at low levels.
How does it,
It'll
like-
bind to your hemoglobin molecules in your blood cells and keep them from holding oxygen.
How would that like get into our house? Like, why would
It's released if you burn anything inside your house. Like if you were to burn a log in your house without a chimney, carbon monoxide would build up. If you were to run a lawnmower in your house, I don't know why you would do that. Carbon monoxide.
Is that how
A lot of people have gas heaters and it can leak out a gas
Does that
heater.
help some people suffocate themselves in their half in their car?
Oh yeah, like on
They hook
Vampire
up hoses
Sounds like
to
on
it.
Vampire Diaries.
They
Yeah,
also
well,
sit in my garage with the car.
Is that when Lord yells at me?
Yeah, that's how people. Well, let's not talk about
Die. I'm like,
Okay, so back here now. So trees will pull carbon dioxide out of the air and pull it into their bodies, and then they'll use that to grow and make new molecules for themselves. And then animals, to get that carbon, animals eat the plants.
And then other animals eat the animals.
And other animals, and then you have the food chain. So that's and then both plants and animals breathe out the carbon dioxide when they do respiration. Do y'all remember the process of respiration? We studied photosynthesis, taking carbon in, and then respiration, breathing carbon out. Remember that? We did. We spent like a week, 2 weeks on it. Well, that's part of the carbon cycle. Carbon dioxide goes into plants, and then animals eat the plants, and then animals and plants breathe out the carbon dioxide through respiration, and then it's back into the atmosphere. So there's your cycle. It's just a small cycle, but that's it. That's the carbon cycle. Yeah.
So do plants release less CO2 than animals?
Well, because plants use a lot of it when they're growing and doing photosynthesis. They use a lot of the CO2. So yes. As long as sun's shining on the plant, it'll use a lot of the CO2 that it would release. Animals don't do any photosynthesis, so they just release all the CO2. Yeah. So, that's part of the cycle. Now, it can happen where the bodies of plants and animals get buried. So when plants and animals die, their bodies go in the ground, and a lot of the carbon is in the ground. And in this picture, they call that soil carbon. And that can get buried and form what's called fossil carbon. And that's like your oil, your coal, your natural gas. And what we can do is we can dig up that fossil carbon and burn it. That's what human emissions are. Put it back into the atmosphere. And we're doing a lot of that right now, and what that does is it raises the temperature of the planet. By cutting down trees and taking all that carbon in the tree and then burning the tree, we're putting it all back into the atmosphere. We're putting extra carbon up there when we dig up the fossil fuels and burn them too. And so humans have made an extra thick atmosphere with more carbon dioxide than it used to have. Actually, I said 0.03%. It's up to 0.04% now. And you might not think that's a lot, but that's a pretty big change.
In a short amount of time.
In a short amount of time. That's enough to drive the temperature up a few degrees. And if it keeps going on, the temperatures could go up, the estimates are 5 to 10 degrees. That could get a lot hotter. And that could change weather, and people are real worried about it. That's global warming. You'll be hearing about that your whole life. The way to quit doing that is quit burning stuff. Quit burning coal, quit burning oil, quit burning natural gas, maybe to try to make our energy out of things that you don't have to burn, like solar and water and nuclear. None of those burn anything that releases carbon. So we're probably going to have to start moving to that pretty soon here, or the place is going to get too hot. What do y'all think of that? Oh, one more thing. A lot of the CO2 in the atmosphere can get absorbed into the water and be stored into the water as a molecule called bicarbonate. The water in the ocean will react with CO2 to form bicarbonate. There's a lot of bicarbonate floating around in the ocean.
Is that like white salt water, or is that?
No, that's not like the salt in water, but it's actually bicarbonate is the same thing as baking soda. There's a little bit of baking soda in all the ocean. It's kind of interesting.
Is it in powder form, or is it?
No, it's dissolved in the water.
Oh, okay.
Want to see video footage? Video footage of the carbon
Carbon
cycle.
is one of the most important elements on Earth. All living things are made of carbon. Most of the fuels that humans use for energy are primarily made of carbon, including the food we eat. Gases made from carbon, such as carbon dioxide, play an important role in regulating climate. Biological activity causes carbon to be constantly converted among different forms and locations. These movements of carbon are referred to as the carbon cycle. The global carbon cycle describes the exchanges of carbon between the atmosphere, terrestrial vegetation, soils and organic matter, ocean, and fossil fuels. These exchanges are continually changing and not in perfect balance. Human activities are converting oil, coal, natural gas, plant and soil organic carbon into carbon dioxide, which is accumulating in our atmosphere, where it contributes to the greenhouse effect. The atmosphere is a relatively small reservoir of carbon, containing less than 1% of the Earth's total carbon pool. Because it's so small, even a slight increase in inputs to the carbon atmosphere can have a big impact on the total concentration over time. The amount of carbon in terrestrial vegetation is comparable to the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. Vegetation takes carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere through photosynthesis. However, the amount that humans continue to add through fossil fuel emissions is more than plants are able to use, so it accumulates in the atmosphere. The CO2 that plants are able to use becomes new plant tissue. Most of the plant tissue winds up naturally dying and fall into the ground to become plant litter and eventually is decomposed or transformed to soil organic matter. In many parts of the world, organic matter accumulates faster than it decomposes, adding to soil carbon pools. Within the soil, there is more than twice as much carbon locked up in organic material than there is carbon in the atmosphere. Human activities such as land use changes and greenhouse gas emissions accelerate the conversion of soil carbon to carbon dioxide. So why is this important? Carbon dioxide is a major greenhouse gas, which causes heat to be retained between the Earth and the atmosphere. Some radiation leaving the Earth's surface is trapped by greenhouse gases, causing heat to be retained. This happens because CO2 absorbs outgoing infrared radiation and re-emits it in all directions, including back down to the Earth's surface. This leads to increased temperatures in the lower atmosphere, which in turn can increase the rate of decomposition, which further increases the amount of atmospheric carbon. This creates a magnifying cycle of increased warming and increased atmospheric carbon. It's important to understand the overall exchanges of carbon to understand this process.
Hey, that was it. So, 10 points. If you can tell me
And I like done video. Gotta keep video.
what process, by what process